Okay, so I would like to just introduce our Monterey Bay Economic Partnership President, Kate Roberts, my boss, who will be moderating our industry panel today. And as I mentioned earlier, MBEP, we call it MBEP, is a membership-based organization. So most of the people up here are also MBEP members, and we're really excited to have them. You guys will have a chance to do intros. I'm just going to bring the mic over here to the end. So, Kate, it's all you.
Great. Thank you so much. So, yeah, as Haley said, I'm Kate Roberts. I run the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. We're a nonprofit, for those of you that aren't familiar with us, and we're based in this region covering the three counties, Santa Cruz, Monterey, and San Benito. We have offices in Monterey County and in Santa Cruz County. And our goal is to create economic vitality throughout the region, which is a tall order. And we do that through our initiatives, a key one of which, of course, is workforce development, which is why we're all here. So I just wanted to first thank you all for taking time out of your busy day to be here. I think this is really important, obviously, to hear that fantastic presentation by Dr. Scolari. That was so insightful and interesting, and I love the fact that she's very data-driven. We are of that same ilk here at MBEP. Making this connection between you all and these fabulous people up here that have taken time out of their busy day to represent industry. What MBEP really strives to do, we have over 80 members that are from all sectors. So we are really thinking of ourselves as the bridge between education and industry, and how do we make that easier? It's amazing, as you all know, how difficult that can sometimes be to either get those two sectors to talk to each other or to understand what the needs are for employers in order to make sure that we're providing the right skills and talent and that pipeline for them. So without further ado then, I'm just going to ask the panel to introduce themselves. We have a very diverse group here of talent, some of which I know really well, some of which I am just meeting for the first time today. They are all, as Haley mentioned, MBEP members, and we're really grateful for that. So I'm going to just toss it down the row here. If you could just tell me obviously your name, title, and company, but also maybe how long you've been doing what you're doing and what type of training you had to be in the job you're in. I'll start with you, Conrad.
Hi, my name's Conrad Schlemmer. I work at Looker, which is a data platform provider based in downtown Santa Cruz. I've been there for just over 4 years. I started as a software engineer and recently transitioned into an engineering manager role. I feel like I've been in the industry since I was a kid because my father was a software engineer, still is. And so, I picked up from that, and I went to school at the Evergreen State College up in Olympia, Washington, and I started out in an arts program, and then I realized that was going to be a challenging career, and I had a bit of a foundation in software engineering, and I enjoyed it, and so I switched we don't really have majors there, but I switched my focus to a computer science degree and wrapped up in my last 2 years doing software engineering.
Good morning, everyone. Reina Navarrete with Tanimura Antle. Tanimura Antle has been in existence for over 36 years. We are employee-owned, and we're vertically integrated. We do everything from producing the seed all the way to farming, harvesting, transporting to the cooler, and then from there it gets shipped to the different stores, Safeway, Sprouts. Some of you probably have seen our product. I've been in the ag industry for about 6 years, although my parents were both harvesters in their careers, so I feel like even though I would hear about their experiences on a day-to-day basis when they would get home or when they would get ready to go to work and prepare their lunch early in the morning, I feel like I'm just starting to really, really dive in terms of what they go through in terms of, being part of the workforce. And I've been in my HR manager role at Tanimura Antle for a little bit over 2 years, with the company close to 6 years.
What did you study?
I studied, actually I did not have any training in HR. I studied business administration at University of the Pacific in Stockton, and I have a master's in public policy at the Panetta Institute in CSUMB. So I felt, both of those degrees have helped me, but I think it's more on the day-to-day job responsibilities where you actually get the most growth and learning experiences.
Hi, I'm Lena Williams. I am the manager of Energy Account Services at Monterey Bay Community Power. I have been in the renewable energy industry for about 7 years. So I came to Monterey Bay Community Power less than a year ago, but my background was in account management, renewable and solar account management. So I came from Solar City and from Tesla, and it was that experience that actually got me into this particular role. My education is with both undergraduate and graduate at the University of Southern California. My experience or my degrees have nothing to do with what I ended up doing because I was a film student. But the careers that I found myself most attracted to didn't exist at the time that I was in college. So it was my work experience and other experiences that actually brought me into the career that I'm in today.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Chris Miller. I have Launch Brigade and Cloud Brigade here in downtown Santa Cruz. We do everything from website design and software development to cloud computing and data analytics. I have 23 years of industry experience, and it was kind of an unusual path I took to get there. I went right out of high school and vocational training into the automotive industry, and I was an auto mechanic for 9 years. And kind of got bored with it, and the dot-com happened, and I was able to transition at that time into industry by taking a few night classes over at Dientes College. So I've worked for a small startup internet service provider. I worked for Sun Microsystems for a while, and I started what I call my third career, entrepreneur, in 2005. Our company just turned 14 years old in March, and I had some background in computer programming in the 80s, back with the old Apple II computers in junior high school, and that early tech education kind of carried over to later on.
I think I have one here. I'm Laurie Kirchner. I've had my design firm here in Santa Cruz for a little over 30 years. I have 2 degrees from San Jose State University, a Bachelor of Arts in Liberal Arts, and a Bachelor of Science in Interior Design. I started out teaching environmental studies, and then I went back to school in my 30s and got a design degree. And it is a 5-year degree, and that's something that I really wanted to kind of point out today. I love what I do, and I'll look forward to talking to you about it.
Good morning, I'm Seppi. I'm a dentist and Chief Dental Officer at Dientes Community Dental. Dientes is a nonprofit dental clinic in Santa Cruz County, and we provide dental services to 12,000 low-income patients. And we have 4 clinics in the area. I moved to the U.S. when I was 16. I finished my 2 last years of high school in Texas. I went to 3 or 4 different community colleges after high school because my family couldn't afford to send me to school, to a 4-year university right away, and I was also working full-time. I moved to California. I went to San Jose State for my undergrad, and I got my BA in biology. And then for dental school, I went to NYU. After NYU, I did a residency for 1 year, and I've been a dentist for 10 years. Thank you for having me here.
Hi, I'm Tish Danovan, Community Employment Coordinator for the Seaside Company, otherwise known as the Boardwalk. Who's been to the Boardwalk? Raise your hand. Good job. I actually started out as a ride operator. My first ride was the little airplanes. I was terrified. And I've moved on since then. I've had 13 different jobs. I also went to Cabrillo, which I could afford it, and also to San Jose State for a degree in recreation. And I also get on-the-job training, too, obviously.
My name's Chris Murphy. I'm the president of the Santa Cruz Warriors. My career aspiration is to have as many hands raised for who's been to a Santa Cruz Warriors game as the boardwalk. Who's been to a Santa Cruz Warriors game? All right, I still have some work to do on that front. So I've been the president of the Warriors for 4 years now. Before that, I spent 10 years with Golden State up in Oakland. I started there as an entry-level ticket salesperson, otherwise known as telemarketing for the sports world, selling tickets. And I got my degree from a four-year institution in upstate New York in business with a concentration in marketing.
Is that better? Yes. Well, that is so interesting. Gosh, I just always find it fascinating to hear how people got to the jobs they got to. I know I can speak for myself that I had a very circuitous route that got to me to where I am today. I majored in German literature and poli-sci. So my mom was like, what, are you going to be a waitress or what? Like, what do you do with a German lit degree? But I ended up going into international business and working in high tech, and now here I am running MBEP. So super stoked. I'm actually also a product of what we called junior colleges back then, but community college. I went to Orange Coast College and did all of my prelim stuff so that when I transferred to UCI that I had all that taken care of much more cheaply. So out of us, I think there's several of us that went to community colleges on the way. Which is interesting. And also, there's a lot of us that are non-technical kind of, humanities folks up here. So that's always interesting, too. I know a lot of kids get pushed into doing technical, you got to be a software engineer, no offense, Conrad. But there are a lot of options for us that aren't maybe as technical. So I just wanted to put that out there. So Tish, I'm going to go back to you, my dear, because I think it's really interesting to start with you. I have tons of questions, and we're going to get to your questions too. So be thinking about what you want to ask this esteemed panel here. But when you're hiring, I mean, you are kind of one of the main HR people for the Boardwalk. You hire tons of people. What do you look for? What sort of career pathways are there at the Boardwalk? Just talk a little bit about your day-to-day and what you can share with our counselors here in the room.
So we are the largest employer of youth in Santa Cruz County. We started at 14 years old. I know, they're very happy about that, the 14-year-olds, believe me. Usually the age range that we usually have is probably 14 to about 20. So high school and college students are our number one employees that we have. So what are we looking for primarily? I'm looking for attitude. I really am. They have to work with other people primarily. I had this one guy, I said, do you want to work with people or without people? He goes, I don't want to work with people. And I said, you know what, I have a job for you. I said, I have a janitorial position from 2 a.m. to 10:30. Does that sound good? Yeah. But for the most part, people really have to get along with other people. You have to work in groups and teams, and nobody wants to work with a cranky person. So I really talk about attitude the most as far as being an important thing. Career pathways at the Boardwalk, there's lots. We have tech, we have accounting, we have art, operations, we have lodging, we have the bowling center. So we sort of think of ourselves as a small city because of all the different opportunities. Mechanics, gardeners, security. Thank you, Sherry.
And when I think of an employee at the Boardwalk, I think about that young person twirling the cotton candy or whatever. But is there a stat that you know of, like how long a typical employee stays with you?
I wish I could say yes, but I don't really know.
Okay,
But we have lots of kids who actually spend their high school and their college career with us, and they move up to supervisor roles, starting off as a ride operator, GAM operator, something like that. So that's very typical for people to move up.
Yeah, great. Raina, I just wanted to move and ask you a similar question. I thought I'd start with our two HR people since I think that's really interesting to this group. What do you look for, and talk a little bit about the career pathways and how people move up the ladder at TNA.
So I look for emotional intelligence. I think it's important for folks to be aware of their emotions and then be able to express them. And I think that leads to the communication, skills that folks need to have in order to be able not just to interact with their peers, but I think also when a manager asks a question, right, or a director, or it could be the president of the company, at the end of the day, everybody should be proud of their own position. It's funny because I think about this quite often. My mom would say, regardless if you're sweeping, the house, or you're sweeping a facility, or you're the president of the company, you should have pride in what you do, and you should be engaged in what you do, and you should do your best in what you're doing. You should be having a purpose, right? And making sure that you're working towards achieving that purpose. So when I see an employee, and it could be an employee that's harvesting, out in the crew, or it could be a manager for one of our operations, it's just that emotional intelligence. They might not have necessarily all the boxes checked off, right, in terms of skill set, requirements, education, experience, but I think just the emotional intelligence comes across when you meet someone. And in terms of developmental pathways within our company, we have employees that have been with us from approximately 250 employees in our workforce have been with our company for more than 20 years. And we have take pride in ownership in that, and we do like a VIP event every year. But there's employees that have been with us from harvesting the crews to becoming a foreperson, which basically leads the crew, to then becoming a supervisor, to then becoming a manager, perhaps a VP of that particular department. So we try to promote within our company and make sure that employees always have, especially if they want to have an advancement within their career. There's some employees that just want to, stay within their position, and that's fine. But if they are having that drive and that initiative, we do want to make sure that we have a career plan.
And I have to say, just from my experience of working with Tanimura Antle, they are just such a great employer. As she said, it's employee-owned. There's ESOP programs. It's and speaking to the career laddering, I happen to one of the big initiatives that MBEP does, as you all may know, also in addition to workforce, is housing. And Tanimura Antle has built this fabulous employer-sponsored housing project called Spreckles Crossing. And one of the women that is one of the sort of managers of that, who's a Tanimura Antle employee, she started out, in just a very entry-level job and has been with the company, I think, for decades, and is now, running that facility, which you wouldn't normally think is a career path when you go and work for an ad company. But they're really good to their peeps, so I love that. So, Conrad, let's get you in here. Technology, obviously, Looker, for those of you who don't know, fantastic company, growing like gangbusters, based in Santa Cruz, as he said. Tell us about the tech skills. You're talking to a room of counselors. Tell us what technical skills, maybe not software, coding, but what other tech skills sets are important for students to learn?
Yeah, I wish that I could say that the tech skills are really what's important. I think that computer science fundamentals are certainly important. We're going to look for people knowing algorithms and data structures and the stuff that they learn in their programs, but that's basically just shows an aptitude for learning. The thing that I think is really most important is as Raina said, it's about emotional intelligence and really about passion for what you're going to be doing, and then about empathy for the customer and understanding like what problems you're going to be solving for the customer. So I don't think that it's really about the hard technical skills. It's really about caring about what you do, and so I think that that's probably industry agnostic, right? It's like if you go into a job and you care about what you're doing and you see how you're making a difference, and that's what's important to you, that's what's going to lead to your success in that industry.
Wow, that's pretty deep coming from a software engineer. I love that. Lena, I want to get you involved in the conversation too. I had a question about Monterey Bay Community Power. Maybe some of our audience participants aren't as familiar with what that is. So I wanted them to understand that a little bit more, if you could. And also, if they want to learn more about what opportunities there are for employment within Monterey Bay Community Power or other partners in your sector, where might they go to get more information?
So Monterey Bay Community Power is a community energy aggregate. I'm not sure if you're aware of what that is, but essentially we are a local clean energy power company. So we're providing carbon neutral 100% carbon neutral and renewable alternative options for customers. We currently operate, some of you may not know that you're already a customer, we currently operate in Santa Cruz County, Monterey County, and San Benito County. And so about a year ago, everyone in Monterey County, Santa Cruz County, and San Benito County, except for a small 3% that weren't eligible, transferred over to receiving part of their power from us. It is a direct collaboration with the investor-owned utility, so PG&E. And so you still received your same bill and pay it the same way, which is why you may not have been aware that we were there. But it just means that we're able to say that we have a carbon neutral Central Coast as of 2018. So you continue to see more of that coming about in the state of California. So as an industry, the CCAs in California, it's less than a decade old. So the first one is actually in Marin County. And over that period of time, though, in the last 8 years, it's expanded to 23, and there's 6 that are scheduled to go online by January of 2020. And within that particular industry, I think what folks are not really aware of is that there's a lot of different skill sets as it expands and grows. So, I mean, with something in an industry that's only 8 years old, you can see it as kind of being in startup mode no matter what community they're in. So if you're in San Jose, you actually have San Jose Clean Energy, so a CCA that just started this year. If you are in Santa Clara, then you have Silicon Valley Clean Energy. So that's the direction that California is headed. We have as a state initiatives to be a carbon neutral state by 2030, and the CCAs are a big part of that. So you can get involved in that actually when you're looking at a career path for the students that you're working with. The biggest challenge is that, number one, very few people know that the industry exists. They all think that if you work for a utility, you're working for PG&E and you're climbing out on poles and stuff like that, and that's not really the case anymore. There are opportunities for analysts. There are opportunities for human resources. For people like myself who actually have account management backgrounds in renewables, but you don't necessarily have to be an environmentalist to want to join a green energy provider. You just have to actually care, like everyone else does, about what you do in your particular area of expertise, whether that be HR, whether that be IT. I know that we bring people on continuously within fields, and they're saying, I applied for this job, but I didn't know who you were or where you were, but you said you needed IT. Okay, so that's what we hire for. I have an opportunity to work with individuals who have degrees in public relations, who have degrees in English. Our HR person is one of the few who actually has a degree in environmental studies, but she's doing HR. So we tend to bring people in 2 ways. I mean, obviously we have opportunities available online, but also internships that actually lead directly to full-time employment. So we have one of our outreach coordinators who started as an intern during his junior year at CSUMB, and they actually hired him before he'd finished his senior year and just let him work part-time. We're all going to his graduation on the 25th, and then he'll officially be full-time. So, but that's a real opportunity. So when students are out there and they're seeing internships or also temp to hire positions, which they've done a lot where somebody's hired in a role for like 10 months, but then they bring them on officially at the start of the new fiscal year, tell them not to be afraid to apply for those. That little category, because these community energy aggregates are in startup mode, that category on the job application that says other relevant duties or responsibilities or work experience considered is a real thing for a lot of the folks that are on the team.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I have to follow that up. You guys know me with a quick plug for our Monterey Bay Internships portal. If you're not aware of that, please use that. Send your kids to it. It's an amazing way for our students in our region to get real-life job experience. Many of those internships are paid. We have a lot of our members and employers that use that portal to find students. And it's, data, right? Data shows that kids and people that have that type of internship experience get paid more. So We love that. Living wage, right? Living wage. So Laurie, my dear friend Laurie Kirchner, whose office is actually right across the hall from our Santa Cruz office. She's an amazing interior designer and more. And I just wanted to get into your brain a little bit so you could share your vast experience and expertise. So what advice would you have for their students who want to pursue a career in some type of design work? What would you tell them?
Well, first of all, I just can't speak highly enough for promoting creativity. And so, if a student walked up to me, I would be absolutely thrilled. I did teach interior design at San Jose State for 3 years, and that was probably the best part of my whole career is working with students. And I'll say we're big student advocates. I do a lot of shadowing, and we have a lot of interns. But I think that I just want to say, I don't know how to really lead into that question, except to first say that I think interior design is maybe sometimes misunderstood, and it's conflated maybe with decoration. There's nothing wrong with that, but HGTV and Joanna Gaines is not what you learn when you get it. Thank you. When you get a degree in interior design, it is a technical degree. It is a technology-driven industry, and that there's a lot of emotional intelligence involved, and I really love that. And one of your questions was, what is one of the main skills? I would say sales. That's how I worked my way through college. And if you can't sell an idea. So if you have someone that's, outgoing and creative, and they want to go into fashion design or interior design, first of all, it's absolutely a viable career. But it is a serious 5-year degree. I really want to give a shout out to the fashion industry, which is not part of what I do, but which is very much integrated into my industry because of how they embrace gender identity and equality, how they really lead in style, and don't ever underestimate that. Everybody in here is talking about a job interview, basically, and how you appear and present yourself is really important. And that design is really, you are affecting everyone's daily experience every day in their environment. So it's a pretty exciting way to go about building a career. And I've had my own firm for 30 years. I don't recommend starting out that way. I would advise them to go cut their teeth on someone else's dime. But there's lots of mentors like us. And they should just be prepared to really buckle down. It's a really rigorous study, but it's highly rewarding. And we specialize in commercial tenant improvement. In fact, we worked on the new school right here on this campus. And we practice all over Northern California. So, we're kind of small but mighty. My business model has always been to work small and play with the big dogs, all of which is to say, you don't have to be part of a big firm, although I recommend that from the very beginning. But I think the best thing I would say is just that it's really a viable way to make a living, either one of them. And I'd highly encourage creative students to get a really good vehicle. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to have you hand that mic to your neighbor there, to Seppi, because I think it's also important for the audience to hear about, from your perspective as a dentist and having a very, obviously medical studies and long internship, residency, all that good stuff that you had to invest in your education. What would you say is the most important lesson that you'd want students that are contemplating that type of career? What would you say is the most important lesson for them?
I think to me what matters most is that you're passionate about what you're doing. Healthcare is a tough industry. It's extremely rewarding, but it's really, really tough. You have to really want it, and you have to have a desire, not to sound cheesy, but to help people. I think if you have a student who's interested in science and who is also somebody who wants to interact with people on a daily basis, it's good to think about options. Medical school and dental school, it takes a really long time. It takes 8 to 12 years, depending on your specialty. And it's not for everyone. If you're ready to work really hard and have really good grades and you want to not have a life for 10 years, go for it. I did it. I don't regret it for a minute. It's amazing. I love what I do. But there are alternatives. Nowadays, there's a lot more emphasis on mid-level providers, so nurses, physician assistants, and even in dentistry, we have a position called RDAEF, who's a mid-level provider in dentistry who can come in as a dental assistant, be promoted to a registered dental assistant, and then go through a training and become an RDAEF and make about $80,000 a year providing direct care to the patients. So it's super rewarding having autonomy of being able to work on their own, and also getting paid and having that prestige of being a provider. So there are so many different avenues that you can pursue if you're interested in healthcare, and depending on the level of motivation and how much time you want to spend, I think it's super important to try to guide people in the right direction, because medical school or dental school, it's a tough journey.
Great, thank you. Chris Miller, let's get you involved in this conversation. And then I'm going to open it up. I'm going to ask maybe one more question after this, and then we're going to get your questions. So you had, kind of like me, you had a very zigzaggy kind of way to get where you are today. What would you say is the one skill that played a critical role in your success?
Persistence, not giving up. I feel like in this age with Google and all this information on the internet, people are able to learn stuff that they weren't able to just a few years ago. And so through my career, I made a point of learning things above and beyond what my immediate job description was, and that really paid off. I couldn't have made it this far without doing that extra learning. And I feel even now there's no room for mediocrity, and that all of our students really need to engage in extracurricular learning activities to embrace that lifelong learning to be able to be successful.
Good, that's great. Okay, I think only Chris Murphy, I haven't picked on you yet, have I? No. Okay, here you go. Tell us, because I know you have a really good answer for this one, so I picked this one. What are some of the ways that your industry is making a difference in working with students and youth in the region?
Yeah, so I think this kind of probably relates to sports in general, but it wouldn't probably surprise anybody to think that there's a lot of students that want to work in the sports industry or want to be around athletics. So I think in our world, we try to have internships that become an option, as well as part-time roles. So we only have 20 people that run our entire organization, but on a game night or an event night, that grows to about 50 to 60 with people that are part-time team members of ours that are in the arena every night, and that, to be honest, they're probably the first person that somebody sees when they come to a game. They're the people they interact with a lot, and they're the best gateway to getting into the sports industry. I would bet that across all people that work in sports, they've probably all had 2 to 3 part-time jobs in sports while they were in college or shortly after college that kind of allowed them to eventually get into that entry-level position. So I think it's something that, as the sports industry continues to evolve, every time I post a job, there's hundreds of applicants from all over the country and sometimes all over the world. And as we narrow things down, a lot of times we look at who has done that part-time job of being an usher at a Warriors arena, or being a part-time person that helps in concessions or helps in coordinating a game production. People that are willing to do those part-time jobs that get them familiar with the sports industry and kind of open their eyes to what it is, and then allows us to probably try to narrow things down, because it's really hard to narrow down when you have hundreds of applicants for a position. A lot of times it's seeing who has that drive and grind to do the part-time roles while they're in college, or after college. I think there's quite a few people in the sports world today on my team that worked part-time sports jobs after they had already graduated to just try to continue to gain experience to get to that next level.
Great. Okay, and it's your turn. I'm sure you guys have lots of questions for our fabulous panel. I'll just do a show of hands, and then I'll repeat the question up here. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and repeat the question. Great question. So Chris was just talking about how he gets so many applicants. How about our other panelists? When you have open jobs, and it's probably more specific to Raina and maybe Tish, what do you look for? How do you screen? I would also add to that perhaps a little bit, like how do you ensure diversity in how you're hiring? So I'm going to get Tish to tackle that.
Thanks a lot. I think that we're looking for, I agree with Chris, that we're looking for people who have some kind of experience already in the field or something that's like that experience in the field. We're looking for, a cogent letter of, a cover letter. But mostly it's like, do they have experience in the field, primarily? So and also when we're getting resumes, we don't know what their nationality is or race or anything like that. So that's it's colorblind as far as when we're first looking at people's resumes.
Right. I just had a fabulous follow-up question, and it just flew out of my brain. So it's kind of chicken and egg, though, right? So how do they get the experience when they don't have the experience? So are there other things you look for, extracurricular activities or other things?
I'll hop in real quick on that. I think to your point about chicken or the egg, I don't think it's always like if you want to work in sports, for example, you don't always have to have experience in sports to get that next job. It could be like-minded experience, or if you want to work in marketing for events, it doesn't mean that you have to have worked at a sports industry or a sports company in order to market for the sports world. You may be marketing for a movie theater or for a Parks and Rec department or something. I think it's about encouraging students to not just look for that dream job, but saying, like, what's the type of skills I can learn in another position that may set me up to have like-minded experience in the roles that we're looking for.
Go ahead and pass it down to Laurie.
Thank you. I think I just wanted to add, that's a really good point. And we advertised for an office manager at one point, and people applied who were a barista, who I would hire in a minute, because they understand schedules, they understand a sequence, they are a perfect person. And I think to speak to this room, just teach students how to articulate their experience. When my daughter was first looking for jobs out of college, it's like, well, you might have been a server, but list all the things that, you learn being a server. Certainly, how to speak to people, how to respect a schedule, what a timeline is, what deadlines are. So I think that's a big part of that. I think that's a great point.
Bilingual, right? I think also the social equity, the social capital that the first speaker was speaking about was so important. It just made me think about the cover letter that Tish mentioned. A lot of your kids probably don't really know how to write a cover letter or know what goes into a cover letter. So how do we give them that social capital to be able to have an adult that they can bounce that off of? Because I know that I had that privilege. I had, parents that could read things for me and correct things. But I know when I hire at MBEP and I get a cover letter or a resume that has typos or things, that is not putting them in their best light. So I always really encourage kids to get some adult that they can run things by and get that input. And I know that's a lot tougher when you have, underserved kids that just don't have that social capital. Randy, do you want to answer?
You want to add something? So, yes, thank you for mentioning that. I think, making sure that when somebody spends time with their resume and cover letter, right? And then we've had positions that are open and we get emails, and even the subject line has the wrong position or the wrong title. And at that point, that they're applying to multiple jobs, which is fine, right? But then they're not paying attention to detail, right? So that's a complete giveaway. And then at the end of the day, you're like, if they're not going to put, they should be showing their best foot forward at the beginning. And if you're already seeing those specific aspects, that there could not be a paying attention to detail in the future. The other thing is having them do their research. We have a lot of applicants, and then when we get to the interview phase, we ask them, do you have questions? And the majority of applicants do not have any questions for us. I feel at the end of the day, we're dating. It's a mutual interview, right? So they're interviewing us just like we're interviewing them. So have the student do the research, make sure they're really paying attention to the job description so that they are, doing their cover letter and their resume based on the job description for the position that they are applying for. And I would throw in something memorable. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that we remember the student's resume, right? If I'm applying to a job, I want to make sure that the hiring manager or the HR department remembers my resume or my cover letter. What's that memorable piece, that you could add that makes you unique to every other person that's applying for that same position?
Good. I think that's super insightful, and I really appreciate all you guys sharing that and what you're looking for and how important this idea of passion keeps coming out. So I think that's great. Okay, we need more questions from you all. Yes?
One of the things that I was hearing when you were introducing yourself is that other than the Dr. Seppi and Mr. Kirchner as an interior designer, is that a lot of you aren't necessarily using the degrees, computer science off the side, aren't necessarily using the degrees you went after, or as you were going for your degree, you changed a direction and went a different direction, or you added more at the end. And I understand how life evolves and goes, things like that. When we're talking about career paths and connecting high school and college and junior college and even to the workforce, it seems that I've been seeing a trend of overeducated, under-experienced, and it sounds like that. You go to college and you're getting a part-time job as a server in a sports arena, but you have a master's degree in communications. That's an overeducation for something you want to get into, and it seems like a very expensive career search when you're going through college. And I think focusing more on that pathways from the high school to the college is a little bit more relevant than we're giving the time to. They can do that career exploration in high school when it's free, junior college when it's less expensive, and you talked about emotional stability and aptitude and those types of things. In career paths and most of the state standards in the high school level, they have a career section in there where they're teaching resumes, they're teaching interviews, and they're teaching that type of thing. Students that are going A to G and going to college do not necessarily get that training in their classrooms. But they're the ones going for the big jobs, they're going for the big money, but they can't interview or say hello or shake a hand. So the whole overeducated, underexperienced is one of the walls that I see. How do you see, from your industry, how do you see being able to help the community colleges and the high schools get to a point where we can even that out a little bit?
So the only reason I'm answering this is because I've probably shifted careers many times because I get very passionate about something, and I'm probably overeducated in some things. It's not uncommon, I think, nowadays for really finding yourselves in a position where as community college advisors, what you're really doing is there's two sets or groups of people that you're educating. There are those folks that are going in or trying to identify their first career path, and then you have the ones that are shifting gears and changing career paths as they re-enter school. I don't think there's a way to avoid with people changing careers more than once in a lifetime. I don't think we really have that same luxury of having everyone graduate to do the one thing and then they do that for 30 years and then they retire anymore. There are so many new jobs, fields even being created while students are in school. Like I said, like myself, the field that I find myself in, it didn't exist when I was in high school. There wouldn't be a way for somebody to put me on that path. So really, I think there should be a focus, at least I know in hiring and also in educating, I think you said it, in helping the students articulate their skill set. Because lots of times there is relevant experience in the things that they're doing both on campus or in previous work experience that really can apply to and shorten that ability for them, that time period from which they start maybe at the entry-level job for the shift for the first job and then take that giant leap up. Because I've done it before when you change careers and because I want to learn everything there is to learn, you're willing to start at the bottom or a step below so that you can gain that experience. And in many cases, you don't really have to do that if you ever have the ability to kind of dig through what you have done, your learned experiences, both through life and education, and then put that into words for the jobs that you're applying for.
So in my previous career, because I have changed careers several times, I oversaw early childhood education programs. So I don't know if you know CARES. I know CARES existed also here in Santa Cruz County. So I think we need to start young, because I have a close to a 4-year-old daughter, but she acts like she's 13 sometimes, and she comes home and she says, I want to be a firefighter. The next day she comes home and she says, I want to be a doctor. The next day she comes home and she says, I want to be a teacher, right? But she's starting to think, right? And I think us as parents or educators or just community members, I think it would be good for us to support those types of ideas, visions, and then I think it takes a continuum. The early childhood education system, and then it's elementary, and then it's middle school, and then it's high school, community colleges, and then you have your 4-year college. So I think it's a continuum. And also, one should never be concerned with being challenged or doing something out of their comfort zone. I think, we gain a lot in terms of confidence, in terms of additional skills, knowledge. So I would encourage, all of us just to continue encouraging our students to, do something out of their comfort zone. Try different things. And hopefully, you may still have different career changes, but I think the experience and the knowledge that you've gained in all those different facets of your career will make you a better professional, right? And then it will also help you work more with your peers, the customers, and lead to that emotional intelligence that we all have been talking about.
Great, and I need to also just give a little quick commercial for along those lines, our Monterey Bay Career Connect website that is exactly intended to do that, to give anyone, elementary school, middle school, high school, college, veteran, to give them the idea of what jobs are out in our local region, what the jobs are, what they pay, who's hiring, what the growth rate is, how they can actually get the training necessary for that job. So when she comes home and wants to be a teacher, what does she need? And say, Cabrillo offers this class. I want to be a firefighter. This is the job opportunity. So really, for me, equity is a huge part of what MBEP does. Economics in our name, but equity and environmental are the three E's that we basically use every day to run the organization. And having that as a tool to inspire youth to jobs that they didn't think that they either could do or were interested in or were available to them, that those are actually available right here in our own backyard. So mbcareerconnect.org, and you can get more information from Haley. And I know you've been so patient, I have to call on you. Go ahead.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So I'm a professor of hospitality tourism, 2- and 4-year, but I'm new to the area. So I, again, going to address this really to Tish. But, as probably the largest employer in hospitality, tourism, recreation in the area, I'm curious to learn, as I think a lot of us are, about the internship programs, like with Cabrillo or MPC, that are, I would imagine, in place, and how those internships have been going for these sectors.
So actually, I'm sad to say that we do not have an internship program at the Boardwalk. Although at San Jose State, I actually had an internship at the Monterey Convention and Visitors Bureau when I was going to school, and it was a great experience for me. It takes a lot of effort to start an internship program and to really do it right. We want to do it right, and we just don't have the bandwidth for it right now. But I think it's a great way to grow people up in the tourism industry. And also, honestly, just working for us. There's lots of opportunities. I mean, I've had 13 different jobs in the company. And I've worked in the bowling center. I was the bowling center manager for a while. Bowling is really boring, by the way. I also, I was a ride operator. I was a catering manager. And I got a chance to do all these different types of positions just naturally. So we don't have an internship program, but we do have a strong training program We have our own training manager. We have Leadership Boardwalk based on Leadership Santa Cruz. We have, lots of training classes for our staff if they want to join it. So we sort of do homegrown, but we don't have a formalized internship program.
I would just encourage into what Tish said as well, similar with the Warriors. Internship is not necessarily that different than part-time job. Our part-time roles that we have, we try to educate and expose them to different elements that we can offer and how you can learn in the industry and grow in the industry. So don't encourage students to look for internships being dramatically different than looking for a part-time job. A lot of times they're synonymous because, as Tish mentioned, to do an internship program really well is a major lift on an organization, and a lot of times it's more effective for us to have part-time jobs that we continue to provide like continuing education through.
Great. Yes. So the question is, on average, how long do you spend looking at a resume?
10 seconds.
Raina? Yeah?
Depending on the role, like 15, just to be a little bit higher than Tish. Probably depends on the technical skill of the role.
16.
Do I hear 17? No. Go ahead.
I spend a little more time, maybe 2 to 4 minutes, and I think that's because our sector is more technical, and we do look for certificates and experience, so it's a little bit different.
Conrad?
I'd say the same, maybe 2 minutes. Because there's a very specific set of skills that would be fundamental.
So, I think for me it's a little bit different. We have a recruiting department that does the top of the funnel. So typically by the time I'm looking at a resume, it's not so much screening them for whether we want to talk to them, it's prepping for that conversation. So, I'll spend a good 5 minutes or so making sure that I understand what their background is so that I'm asking experience-appropriate questions.
Yeah, I would say about 5 minutes. We get a lot of resumes, and what I find peculiar is a lot of times the skills don't even necessarily match the job description, and we are highly technical, so it is important that they've got 75% of the skills that we need.
It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah, question up front.
So I'm the CTE counselor for Santa Cruz City School District, and sorry to put you on the spot, Tish, but we use Tish as much as we can get her, and what we did, we teach a whole portfolio in all of our CTE classes, and so what we did is we videoed Tish in a scenario where she's interviewing a really bad interview, and a really good interview. And we took that into every single one of our CTE classes in the district, and that's how we began teaching them how to do a cover letter and a resume. And it was, the kids loved it because they all know her and they love her. So
Trish is easy to love.
Yeah.
Other questions? In the back there. Yeah.
So I teach successful interview techniques as part of dual enrollment at a high school, so I'm in community college. And I really like what Raina said about teaching students to do research the job and business that they're going to apply to, and come with questions. But I wanted to ask the rest of you, since do you have any advice for me or anything you want me to include in my successful interviewing techniques class to young folks? Like, is there a common mistake that they make, or is there a common thing that you would want to see them do that you can give me that I can bring back to the class?
Eye contact. Okay, hold on. Let me repeat the question. Yeah. So, what skills in particular and tips would you give to students for specific to interviewing skills? Yeah, Chris just said eye contact. Definitely. I will add one in there that I meant to say earlier is make sure they have at least 2 questions. There's a million questions they should be asking me. I don't care if they're interviewing for a ride operator or running a program at MBEP. I mean, there should be a gazillion questions running through that person's brain. So have 2 ready, or 3, and then if I've already answered 1 or 2 of them through the course of the interview, at least they have 1 more question, because if that is a huge red flag for me, if I don't get a question at the end of my interview. Others?
So, interviewing can be intimidating, actually, for both the candidate and the person doing the interview, I think. It's very vulnerable. But I think that a lot of people, especially early in their career, go into an interview situation thinking that the person interviewing them is their enemy. And really, they should go into those situations knowing that that person is there to support them, and like they want that person to succeed, and they want it's a pain in the butt to hire people, and so we want to have successful interviews and help people to succeed. So they should go in knowing that they can ask for clarifying questions, that they should be clear, like, hey, I'm not certain about the answer to this, but here's like, if I were to approach this not knowing the answer, these are the steps that I would take. So being really honest with the person they're interviewing with.
Sadly, we only have a few minutes left. God's time has just flown by. Did you have something you wanted to add to that, Lena?
I was just going to say, because so many positions, when you mentioned having a recruiting department, because so many positions nowadays are filtered by recruiters, and sometimes that first interview that you go into is sometimes a panel, or that is the final interview. I would tell students to be aware that every part of your correspondence and communication is part of the interview. So the first person that you talk to is going to have an opinion, and they're going to share it with the hiring manager, whether it's that person or not. So I would let them know that the interview begins the second they hit send on the application or submitting their resume, and then it commences until you've actually started the job.
And it continues when they walk in the room, how their posture, what they're wearing, how they address you, how many likes they say. I'm just saying.
I forgot to add something earlier.
Okay.
Make
you're
sure
getting a lot
they
of feedback.
take their resume and their cover letter. I have been surprised on how many applicants assume because they've emailed their resume and cover letter, they don't take it to the interview. So I know it seems like, we're in a new era, technology, but I think there's certain things that still need to be, completed and brought to the interview.
Yeah. Laurie, you had something you want to add real quick, or not? Or somebody? Or okay.
Whenever I'm interviewing somebody, after we're done and they're gone, I go to the front office and I say, how did that person greet you? How did they act toward you? And I get feedback from the front office, because it's not important if they're nice to me and polite. It's important is how they treat people overall.
Absolutely.
I would just say, and it's hard to do in an interview, and I couldn't agree with Conrad more, but just exhibit confidence, and also, don't be chewing gum. Don't be playing with your hair. Don't put your hands all over your face the entire time, because all of those things, this is important, right? Because how many times have you interviewed? We've all interviewed people a lot, even if they're young.
Yeah.
Have a presence. And I don't think that's a hard thing to teach.
Yeah. Chris, you pass it down, and then we're going to do one last question.
I think it's also the little things for that and for all, but write a thank you note.
Absolutely.
Handwritten's better than an email, but an email will suffice. And knowing also it's not enough to just click send and apply for a job online. Encourage your students to hunt down who must be the interviewer in charge of that position at the company, and have them maybe reach out on LinkedIn or send a note in advance that just says, hey, I just applied for this job. I'd really love to learn more and have the opportunity to talk to you. Everybody here is probably getting numerous applicants, so the people that do a little bit more, that have researched specific questions, it all impacts the feeling we have with the conversation that we're having with somebody else.
Absolutely, and I think it's so good that you say that, because we probably, being privileged white peeps up here, some of us, at least in my world, take that for granted, that's what you do. But back to the social capital idea, a lot of kids don't know that. So you got to stand out. You got to do the extra work. When I don't get a thank you note, that's also a huge red flag for me. So anyway, really, really good feedback. I wish we had more time, but we're going to do one real quick rapid fire question, starting with you, Chris, at the end. One real quick reply with the one key piece of information you'd like these counselors to share with their students as they engage them in their career choices. What would you say? Parting last word.
Soft skills are so important. Being able to talk to people, like at this time of technology and phones. Phones are amazing, but they're also your worst enemy, I imagine, dealing with a lot of the students that you are. Soft skills and being able to have a conversation is more important than almost anything I look at.
Apply for a job that you really want to do, because their natural enthusiasm will absolutely come through.
I just want to say that if you have a student that loves science and loves people, healthcare is for them. And look at all the avenues. Don't be focused only on medical or dental school. Look at all the avenues. Not everybody's meant to take that really long, difficult path. And just look at all of your options. And it's an amazing field, and it's really fun.
Well, first of all, I would say the same thing about creativity, and please dispel the myth. I mean, I know when I went back, my dad's an architect, by the way. When I told him in my 30s, I'm going back to get a design degree, I thought he'd be thrilled. He was just convinced I'd never make a living. Proved him wrong, but if you have a student that comes to you and they're creative and they think going to art school or art and the environment, two most important things in the fiber of our culture. So please encourage them. And I would also just say the power of conversation and articulation, and also everything analog. I think this really needs to be stressed to millennials. I've raised two of them, and the idea of a handwritten thank you note or just any kind of gesture of acknowledgement is really, really important.
I agree with Chris. Follow up after sending the resume in. And I think having experience in any kind of customer service, because that's going to lead to the development of those soft skills that are so important.
I think it'd be very impactful that each of your students is aware that there are opportunities. I'm reminded every day that they should not be telling themselves no. They should just be asking themselves how and creating a path for success.
I would encourage you to encourage your students to find their purpose. I think ultimately if someone finds their purpose or is exploring their purpose, they're more likely to be engaged, more productive, get along with their peers, have that emotional intelligence, and then also have better decision making. So I think purpose matters a lot, because at the end of the day, I think we've all said, if you love and are passionate about what you do, success will come naturally, money will come naturally, right? And you will be more fulfilled overall.
Maybe this doesn't apply to all of your students, but the software engineering industry is unfortunately heavily lopsided to men and white men. But there is now a strong realization in the industry that both diverse cultures and genders and the perspectives that come with those are extraordinarily valuable. So while it's, I think, a little daunting to go into a field that is dominated by people who don't share your background, I would please encourage the underrepresented folks to not be discouraged. There's a tide change happening, and we're really looking to find more balance and diverse opinions and backgrounds.
Here to that. Boy, having spent my career in high tech, over 25 years in high tech, I can say that there's been many, many, many times that I was the only female in the room. And of course, lack of ethnicity has been a huge issue for that industry for a really long time. And I think they are finally waking up. So thank you, Conrad, for making that point. Sadly, our time has come to an end. I feel like we could spend another hour with these folks. The good news is some of them are going to be able to stick around and be part of our lunch, which is coming up. I just wanted to say real quick that, at MBEP, we're involved in a lot of different things, a lot of different issues. This is so important. This is somewhere where my heart lies in workforce development. I did this on the international level when I was in high tech and networked and computer training for underprivileged and underserved peeps all over the world. And now I bring that skill here to my own backyard. And I am strongly convinced in what was just mentioned by our panelists that It's not an issue of intelligence or skills distributed evenly by zip code. It's opportunity. So we need to make sure that we're giving all our kids the opportunity that they need to access the type of information, the type of great information and skills and expertise that you all bring to the room. I can't thank you enough for all you do every day to really help our kids achieve a great career and follow their passion. So let's give a nice warm up thank you to our wonderful panelists. And we are going to now move to lunch. Lunch is a buffet. You can either stay, if you're at the table where you want to see the little placards there, and is a topic that you're interested in, you are free to stay there. If you'd like to move to another table with a different placard, just take your stuff and do so. We're going to discuss over lunch not only with these folks that are able to stay, but also the deputy sector navigators, which we're going to learn about from Audrey, who is going to come up and introduce herself and tell us a little bit more about that. So thank you.